Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving into a deeply emotional and powerful story that explores the pain of betrayal, the strength it takes to stand up for love, and the courage needed to break free from toxic family ties. This isn't just a story about a relationship tested by darkness, it's about resilience, justice, and choosing to protect the one you love when no one else will. If you've ever felt torn between family and what's right, this one will hit home. So grab a blanket, settle in, and let's get into it. Love often arrives unannounced, weaving its way into our lives when we least expect it. For me, that love was Maya. We met on a crisp autumn afternoon at a local bookstore, both reaching for the same worn copy of Pride and Prejudice. Our eyes met, and in that shared moment of surprise, a connection sparked. Maya's laughter was the kind that could light up the darkest rooms, and her presence felt like a balm to my often restless soul. Over the course of a year, our bond deepened, built on shared dreams, whispered secrets, and countless moments of unspoken understanding. Introducing Maya to my family was a step I approached with both excitement and trepidation. My parents, ever the traditionalists, held firm beliefs about relationships and the roles we play within them. Yet, it was my younger brother, Eric, who occupied my thoughts the most. 3 years my junior, Eric had always been the golden child in our family narrative. Where I was the steady, responsible elder son, Eric was the charismatic, adventurous spirit who could do no wrong in our parents' eyes. His charm was undeniable, but beneath it lay a pattern of behavior that often crossed boundaries, actions dismissed by our family as mere youthful exuberance. Despite these reservations, Maya's optimism was unwavering. "Families can surprise you," she would say, her eyes reflecting hope. She believed in the inherent goodness of people, always seeking the silver lining. It was this very belief that led us to accept the invitation to my cousin's wedding, a grand affair that promised the gathering of our entire extended family. The event seemed like the perfect opportunity for Maya to immerse herself in the familial tapestry that had shaped my life. The venue was a picturesque estate, its sprawling gardens and elegant halls echoing with laughter and music. Maya, in her grace and warmth, was an instant favorite among many of my relatives. She danced with my aunts, shared stories with my uncles, and played with the little ones, her genuine nature shining through. Watching her seamlessly blend into my world filled me with a profound sense of gratitude. Yet amidst this joyous occasion, an undercurrent of unease began to surface, subtle at first but growing more palpable with each passing moment. The rehearsal dinner was our first collective family gathering before the main event. Held in the cozy ambience of my parents' home, it was meant to be an intimate affair, a precursor to the grandeur of the wedding day. Maya and I arrived hand in hand, the familiar scent of my mother's cooking evoking a sense of nostalgia. As we stepped into the warmly lit living room, a chorus of greetings enveloped us. Maya's eyes sparkled with anticipation, her smile radiant as she met each family member. Then came Eric. His entrance was characteristically flamboyant, arms wide open, a grin plastered across his face. "There's the couple of the hour," he exclaimed, striding towards us. Before I could react, he enveloped Maya in an embrace that lingered just a heartbeat too long. I noticed the subtle stiffening of Maya's posture, the brief flicker of discomfort in her eyes, yet ever gracious, she brushed it off, attributing it to Eric's exuberant nature. Throughout the evening, Eric's attention towards Maya was conspicuously intense. He maneuvered conversations to include her, often interrupting others to pose questions directly to her. His compliments, though veiled in jest, carried an undertone that felt inappropriate. "If only I'd met you first, Maya," he quipped during dinner, eliciting a round of laughter from the table. Maya offered a polite smile, But beneath the table, I felt her hand tighten around mine. Later that night, as we prepared to leave, Maya hesitated. "Did you notice Eric's behavior?" she asked, her voice laced with uncertainty. I sighed, running a hand through my hair. "That's just Eric being Eric," I replied, attempting to downplay the unease that had settled in my chest. "He's always been expressive." Maya nodded slowly, but the shadow of doubt remained. In hindsight, I realized that was the moment I should have acted, should have set boundaries. But familial bonds are complex, and the desire to maintain harmony often silences the voice of reason. I convinced myself that Eric's actions were harmless, that Maya's discomfort was temporary. It was a decision that would haunt me in the days to come. The wedding day dawned with promise. Maya looked ethereal in her attire, her presence illuminating every room she entered. As we mingled with guests, I couldn't help but feel a swell of pride, yet the undercurrent of unease persisted. Eric's eyes seemed to follow Maya, his presence materializing beside her with unsettling frequency. He interrupted conversations, inserted himself into dances, and found reasons to touch her, a hand on the small of her back, fingers brushing against hers as he handed her a drink. Family members chuckled, attributing his behavior to his playful nature. Eric's just being his charming self, an aunt remarked, nudging me playfully. But beneath the facade of joviality, a storm was brewing, one that would soon engulf us all. The sun had barely dipped beneath the horizon, casting the reception hall in golden hues, when the atmosphere shifted from warmth to unease. Laughter echoed off marble walls, champagne flutes clinked in celebration, and beneath the dim lights, couples swayed to slow melodies. Maya and I had taken a break from the dance floor, our cheeks flushed from movement and wine, finding comfort in a quiet corner near the garden doors. For a moment, it felt like we'd carved a private sanctuary out of a chaotic celebration. But even there, peace couldn't hide us from what was about to unfold. Eric had been keeping his distance, at least on the surface, but his eyes were always watching, tracking Maya's movements with the kind of obsession that no one seemed willing to acknowledge. I had caught him staring multiple times that day, eyes narrowed, a strange flicker of something unplaceable behind them. I'd convinced myself that I was imagining it, that it was just wedding nerves, or maybe jealousy, or perhaps just Eric being dramatic and self-absorbed as always. I wanted to believe that. I needed to, because the alternative, that something darker lived behind his smiles, was too painful to face. When Maya excused herself to use the restroom, I didn't think twice. She kissed my cheek, whispered a soft, "Be right back," and disappeared into the crowd. I stayed behind, chatting with one of my cousins about an old road trip, trying to shake the sense that something felt off. 10 minutes passed, then 15. I scanned the crowd, my stomach beginning to churn. Eric was no longer at his table. I moved quickly, weaving through guests, past waiters carrying trays of hors d'oeuvres, my heart pounding louder than the music. I turned down the hallway that led to the restrooms, and that's when I heard it. Maya's scream. It wasn't loud, more of a muffled gasp, but it froze my blood. Rounding the corner, what I saw burned into me like fire. Eric had Maya pinned against the wall, one arm across her chest, the other gripping her wrist. With such force, her knuckles were turning white. His face was inches from hers, contorted in something between a sneer and desperation. Maya's eyes locked with mine the moment I appeared, wide and terrified, and something inside me shattered. "Get away from her!" I bellowed, grabbing Eric by the collar and yanking him backward with all the strength I had. He stumbled, eyes wild, fists clenched like he might actually fight me. For a brief second, I saw the boy I used to protect from bullies at school, the brother I taught how to ride a bike. But that memory vanished the moment he lunged at me, snarling, accusing me of stealing what was supposed to be his. Security arrived within seconds, summoned by the noise. Maya collapsed into my arms, trembling, and I held her close, shielding her as Eric was restrained. He screamed obscenities, blaming her, blaming me, blaming the world. All the charm was gone now, stripped away like a mask he no longer cared to wear. My parents arrived not long after, drawn by the commotion. And just as I had feared, their reaction wasn't disbelief at Eric's violence. It was horror that someone might see it. My mother immediately rushed to Eric, sobbing, demanding they let him go. My father began shouting about family matters and private misunderstandings, trying to stop the officers from doing their job. Maya stood silently beside me, her dress torn, eyes filled with tears that refused to fall. My father called her a liar. My mother accused her of trying to ruin Eric's future. All I could do was hold Maya tighter and watch the people I once called family destroy whatever illusion of loyalty remained. As Eric was led away in handcuffs, still shouting about betrayal, I realized this wasn't just about what had happened that night. It was about everything before it, the years of turning a blind eye, of making excuses, of allowing bad behavior to flourish unchecked. Eric hadn't become this person overnight. He was a creation of decades of denial and privilege. And now the consequences of that upbringing had finally spilled out into the open, staining the pristine image my parents had worked so hard to cultivate. Back at the table, the reception carried on as if nothing had happened. Some guests whispered, others looked away. Only a few, my cousin Holly among them, came to check on Maya, to offer support or ask if we needed anything. The rest? They chose the path of least resistance, as people so often do when faced with uncomfortable truths. They drank, they danced, they laughed too loudly. They told themselves that the drama had passed, that everything would return to normal once the night was over. But I knew nothing would ever be the same. Maya and I left the wedding before the cake was cut. In the car, we sat in silence for a long time. I kept one hand on the wheel, the other on hers. She didn't cry, she didn't speak. Her strength in that moment astounded me. Finally, as we pulled into the driveway of her apartment, she whispered, "I thought I could handle your family, but I never imagined they'd try to protect him after that." Sorry, I said, my voice breaking. "I should have protected you sooner." She looked at me then, eyes soft but weary. "You're not responsible for him. You're responsible for how you move forward, and you did the right thing tonight." I nodded, but the guilt still clung to me like a shadow. I had hoped this wedding would be the beginning of something beautiful, a chance to merge two worlds, to see my past and my future embrace. Instead, it became a dividing line, and as painful as that realization was, I knew one thing for certain. No matter what it cost me, I would never allow anyone to hurt Maya again. Not my brother, not my parents, not anyone. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but sometimes doing the right thing means walking away from everything you once thought you needed, so you can protect what truly matters. In the days following the wedding, the weight of the evening's events pressed heavily upon both Maya and me. The vibrant energy that had once characterized our relationship was now overshadowed by an unspoken tension. Maya's radiant smile had dimmed, replaced by a distant gaze and a hesitancy in her touch. The trauma inflicted by Eric's actions had left an indelible mark on her spirit. Determined to support her, I suggested we seek counseling together. Initially, Maya was reluctant, fearing that confronting the memories would only intensify her pain. But with gentle encouragement, she agreed. Our therapist provided a safe space for Maya to voice her fears and for me to understand the depth of her anguish. Through these sessions, we began to rebuild the trust and intimacy that Eric's betrayal had shattered. Meanwhile, the chasm between my parents and me widened. Their unwavering defense of Eric's behavior was a source of constant conflict. Phone calls turned into heated arguments, and family gatherings became battlegrounds of differing morals. My mother, with tear-filled eyes, would plead for unity, while my father demanded loyalty to the family name. But how could I stand by a family that condoned such reprehensible actions? One evening, after another confrontational call with my parents, Maya took my hand, her eyes searching mine. "I can't ask you to choose between me and your family," she whispered, "but I need to know that our safety and well-being come first." Her vulnerability was palpable, and in that moment, I realized the gravity of the situation. I assured her that she was my priority, and together, we decided to set boundaries with my family. We informed my parents that until they acknowledged the severity of Eric's actions and sought professional help for him, we would be distancing ourselves. The decision was met with resistance and accusations, but for the first time in weeks, Maya and I felt a semblance of control over our lives. As time passed, Maya's resilience shone through. She enrolled in self-defense classes, channeling her trauma into empowerment. I joined her, not only to support her, but to learn how to better protect our shared future. Together, we transformed our pain into strength, finding solace in each other's unwavering support. Months later, we received news that Eric had voluntarily entered a rehabilitation program. It was a small step, but it signified a potential shift in his acknowledgement of his actions. My parents reached out, expressing a desire to mend our fractured relationship. While the wounds were still fresh, Maya and I agreed to family therapy sessions, hopeful that open dialogue could pave the way for healing. The journey was arduous, filled with setbacks and moments of doubt. But through it all, Maya and I emerged stronger, our bond fortified by adversity. We learned that love isn't just about cherishing the joyful moments, but also about standing together in the face of darkness, confronting it head on and finding light on the other side. In the aftermath of the wedding incident, Maya and I found ourselves navigating a tumultuous sea of emotions. The betrayal by my own family, especially my parents' unwavering defense of Eric, left us both disillusioned and heartbroken. Determined to find solace and understanding, we sought refuge in a local support group for survivors of familial betrayal and abuse. Our first meeting was held in a modest community center where the walls seemed to echo with the collective pain and resilience of its attendees. As we settled into the circle of chairs, a middle-aged woman named Linda began to share her story. She spoke of her son, who had exhibited violent tendencies from a young age, and her husband's refusal to acknowledge or address the behavior. Her voice trembled as she recounted the isolation she felt, trapped between protecting her younger children and confronting her spouse's denial. Listening to Linda, I felt an uncanny resonance with our own predicament. The parallels were striking, and for the first time, I realized that our struggle was not an isolated one. When it was my turn to speak, I hesitated, the weight of our experiences pressing heavily on my chest. But as I began to narrate the events, the stalking, the assault, the familial betrayal, the room's atmosphere shifted. Nods of understanding and murmurs of empathy enveloped us, creating a cocoon of collective support. Maya, who had been silent throughout, finally found her voice. She spoke of the fear that gripped her during sleepless nights, the anxiety that shadowed her every step, and the profound sense of violation that lingered. Tears streamed down her face as she expressed her gratitude for the safe space, and for the first time since the incident, I saw a glimmer of hope in her eyes. The group's facilitator, a compassionate man named Robert, introduced us to various coping mechanisms. He emphasized the importance of grounding techniques to combat anxiety attacks, suggesting simple exercises like the 5-4-3-2-1 method, identifying 5 things one can see, 4 things one can touch, 3 things one can hear, 2 things one can smell, and 1 thing one can taste. Maya found solace in this practice, using it during moments of overwhelming distress. Robert also encouraged us to pen letters to those who had wronged us, not to send, but as a therapeutic release. One evening, Maya and I sat at our kitchen table, the dim light casting elongated shadows on the walls. With trembling hands, we poured our emotions onto paper. Maya's letter to Eric was a raw outpouring of pain and anger, while mine to my parents oscillated between sorrow and a desperate plea for understanding. Though these letters remained unsent, the act of writing them lifted a portion of the burdens we bore. In our quest for healing, Maya discovered a passion for painting. She transformed our spare room into a makeshift studio, where canvases bore the abstract representations of her journey. Colors clashed and merged, depicting the chaos and eventual harmony she sought. Her art became a medium through which she reclaimed her narrative, each stroke a testament to her resilience. I, on the other hand, found refuge in nature. Weekend hikes became my sanctuary, the rhythmic crunch of leaves beneath my boots grounding me. On one such hike, I stumbled upon a secluded lake, its surface a mirror reflecting the vast expanse of the sky. Sitting by its edge, I allowed myself to grieve, to release the pent-up emotions I'd suppressed in my attempt to be strong for Maya. The wilderness listened without judgment, embracing my vulnerability. Our journey also led us to explore meditation and mindfulness. We attended workshops where instructors guided us through exercises designed to anchor us in the present moment. Maya took to it naturally, her breath synchronizing with the gentle chimes that marked the passage of time. For me, it was a struggle to quiet the cacophony of thoughts, but with persistence, I began to find brief moments of peace amidst the turmoil. Amidst our healing, we encountered individuals who imparted invaluable lessons. An elderly neighbor, Mrs. Thompson, shared stories of her youth, of battles fought and lost, and the wisdom gleaned from them. She spoke of forgiveness not as an absolution of the offender's actions, but as a gift to oneself, a release from the chains of resentment. Her words resonated, planting seeds of contemplation within us. As months turned into a year, Maya and I found ourselves standing at a crossroads. The scars remained, but they no longer defined us. We had forged a path through the darkness, illuminated by the support of strangers who became friends, the embrace of nature, and the rediscovery of passions that breathed life into our weary souls. In reflecting upon our journey, we recognized the profound strength that resides within the human spirit. While the shadows of our past may occasionally loom, we now possess the tools to navigate through them hand in hand, hearts resilient and hopeful for the future. It was a strange thing feeling safe in the silence of a new place while the noise of everything we left behind still echoed in our bones. The day we moved, the sky was gray. Not dramatic, not stormy, just quietly overcast, as if even the weather wasn't sure what to say. Maya kept her hand on my arm most of the way there, not because she needed to, but because we both understood that touch was a promise, that we'd find peace, that we'd build something better, that whatever was broken in the wake of that wedding night wouldn't break us. The town we moved to was smaller than we were used to, slower. People smiled at you in the grocery store, waved even if they didn't know your name. The first week, we took long walks through tree-lined streets that curled like ribbons through quiet neighborhoods. We didn't talk much about the past, not right away. We knew if we gave it room, it would crawl back in like smoke under a door, poisoning the fresh start we so desperately needed. Instead, we filled our days with the little things. Every house had something that felt gentle about it. Porches with rocking chairs, flower beds spilling over with marigolds and lavender. There was something unspoken in the air, something that whispered, "Start over." And that's exactly what we intended to do. Maya found a nearby clinic that was hiring, and I set up my remote workspace in the sunniest room of our apartment. She hung soft curtains in that room, pale blue with tiny birds stitched into the fabric. "For peace," she said with a smile. and I didn't need to ask what she meant. There were still nights when she startled awake, her breathing shallow and fast, her hand clutching the sheets. I'd hold her without asking questions. Not everything needed words. Sometimes healing lives in the quiet things, the steady rhythm of someone breathing beside you, the soft hum of a kettle in the morning, the way the dog curled himself at our feet, like a living, breathing reminder that loyalty didn't always come with a blood tie. It was hard not to think about Eric, even harder not to think about my parents. Every day I fought the instinct to check my phone, expecting some new message that would try to pull us back into their chaos. But the silence, it turned out, wasn't a threat. It was a relief. The kind that feels awkward at first, like stepping into a room you forgot existed, and then realizing it's exactly where you were meant to be. The therapy helped, more than I expected. Not the kind with cold chairs and ticking clocks, but a counselor who let us sit together on a worn-out couch and speak in fragments, if that's all we had. Maya started opening up about things I hadn't known before. How, even before Eric, she'd grown up feeling like she had to smile through discomfort, make herself small so others could feel big. Her voice cracked when she said it, and I realized that surviving Eric's assault wasn't the first time she'd been made to shrink herself, just the last time she'd allow it. For my part, I had to admit how much it hurt that my parents chose to defend him, that they watched him stalk, harass, and eventually assault the woman I loved, and still asked me to forgive, to understand, to be a good brother. It made me question everything I'd believed about what love looked like. Because if love doesn't protect you, if it doesn't stand beside you when it counts, then what is it? We made new friends slowly. Not the kind of fast, bright friendships you have in college, but the kind that grows like ivy, winding its way into your life, one shared moment at a time. There was Olivia, who owned a bookstore and always had tea brewing behind the counter, and Jeremy, a retired firefighter who invited us to his backyard barbecue after only 3 conversations. These people didn't know what we'd come from. They just saw us as we were. Kind, quiet, sometimes tired, but trying, and that was enough. One afternoon, as we sat by the lake with sandwiches in our laps and the sun just beginning to slide behind the hills, Maya turned to me and said, "I think I'm starting to believe again." I didn't ask in what. I didn't need to. I knew she meant in people, in safety, in a future that didn't hurt to picture. I reached for her hand and held it like it was the most sacred thing in the world, because maybe that's what this was really about, not escaping something awful, but choosing something better, choosing each other, choosing love, not the hollow kind that hides behind duty or blood, but the kind that says, I see you, I believe you, I'm staying. And in that place, by that lake with the wind carrying only the scent of pine and promise, it felt like enough. More than enough, it felt like home. The news came on a Thursday when the air was heavy with the scent of rain and the promise of something shifting. I had just finished a call with a client, the kind where the minutes feel like hours, when Maya walked into the room with her phone trembling in her hand. Her eyes met mine, wide and unsteady, and I knew, before she spoke, before the words took shape in the air, that something had broken again. Samuel had been arrested, not for what he did to Maya, not for the stalking, not for the assault at the wedding that left bruises on her arms and panic in her voice, not for the threats whispered through voicemail or the relentless gaslighting he inflicted through our parents' carefully orchestrated lies. No, he had been arrested for hurting someone else, his wife. A woman neither of us even knew existed until that very moment, Rachel. The name felt unfamiliar in my mouth, foreign and soft, until I realized I had seen it before, once. On a family Facebook post I'd scrolled past without a second glance. Samuel finally found the one. It had read, God is good. That was almost a year ago, a year in which we had lived in quiet exile, trying to stitch our lives back together while Samuel had gone on to build a life with someone new. Or so the story went. Maya sat beside me, scrolling through news headlines, reading aloud in a voice gone tight with disbelief. Found unconscious, she whispered. Fractured wrist, broken ribs, hospitalized. I watched her face change, not just into sadness or anger, but something more complicated. A knowing, a deep, terrible ache that recognized itself in another person's pain. Rachel's story was ours, different details, different setting, but the same darkness, the same man. Samuel hadn't changed. He had only found a new mirror to shatter. I thought I would feel rage, and it was there, yes, hot and sharp and furious. But mostly, I felt sorrow, not pity, not sympathy in the abstract sense, but sorrow so thick it pressed against my ribs, because I had begged my family to see it. I had shown them every warning sign, every scar Maya carried, and they had turned away, not because they didn't see, but because they refused to, because protecting their version of him mattered more than protecting anyone else. I didn't sleep that night, neither did Maya. We lay together in the quiet, the weight of the past pressing in like fog. At some point, she whispered a room. Do you think she felt as alone as I did? And my heart cracked, because I knew the answer. Of course she had. Of course she did. The next morning, Holly called. Her voice was low, even, the kind people use when they're trying not to let grief leak through the cracks. She'd heard from a cousin that Rachel had been trying to leave, that she'd reached out for help but been met with silence, that our father had stepped in, not to protect her, but to threaten her. Real estate connections, business deals, the same tactics they had used on us. They never stopped. Holly told us Rachel was safe now, that her sister had taken her in, and that she was cooperating with the police, that Samuel's arrest hadn't come from a single moment of violence, but from a long, steady accumulation of horrors, that he had been beating her for months, that the bruises she wore were only the ones that couldn't be hidden anymore. I couldn't sit still after the call. I walked until my legs ached, past the bookstore and the church, and the little park where Maya and I sometimes took our evening walks. I ended up at the lake, staring out at the water, wondering how many other Rachels there had been, how many women had sat in silence, hoping someone would believe them, hoping someone would help. That evening, I told Maya I wanted to reach out, not to the family, not to the people who had buried us both under denial and excuses, but to Rachel, through Holly, just to let her know she wasn't alone. Maya looked at me for a long time, her eyes shining with a sadness that had aged her more than anything ever should. Then she nodded. Yes, she said quietly. Yes, we should. We wrote a letter, nothing elaborate, just a few paragraphs filled with truth, that we believed her, that we understood, that she didn't deserve what happened, that healing wasn't linear, but it was possible. That somewhere out in the world, there were two people who knew exactly how it felt to be gaslit, cornered, doubted, and betrayed, and who had still found light on the other side. We never expected a response. We didn't need one. Sometimes what matters most isn't the reply, it's the reaching. The hand extended into darkness, saying, "You are not alone in this." Because if there's one thing Samuel taught us, it's that silence is his greatest ally. And if there's one thing Maya and I learned the hard way, it's that survival is not just about escaping someone, it's about choosing to speak, choosing to stand, choosing to protect not just yourself, but the people who come after. So we chose, again, always. The letter came on a Tuesday, folded carefully into a crisp white envelope with no return address, just my name printed in tight, familiar handwriting. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. It had been over a year since I'd spoken to anyone from my family, and I had long stopped expecting anything from them. No apologies, no recognition, no reconciliation, but something about the weight of the envelope made me pause. I handed it to Maya without opening it, and we sat on the couch together while she read it aloud. It was from my mother, 12 pages. 12 pages of apologies, of confessions, of things she said she should have seen, should have done. She wrote of watching the news about Samuel's arrest, of hearing Rachel's sobs through the courtroom recordings, and realizing too late the cost of her silence. She said she finally understood what we had been trying to say all along, that love without accountability is not love at all. That by defending Samuel, by pretending his behavior was normal or excusable, she had betrayed not only us but herself. That every time she said, "He's just confused," or "He didn't mean it," she was paving the road for him to become the man who would leave bruises on Rachel's body and scars on our hearts. She said she had started therapy, that after Samuel's arrest, the world she had so carefully constructed, the image of a perfect family, a successful son, a home free from scandal, collapsed like glass under pressure. She wrote of waking up in the middle of the night, hearing echoes of her own voice from the past, defending things no mother should ever defend. She wrote of guilt like a flood washing away every justification she had clung to. And then she asked for a second chance. I sat there in silence, staring at the paper in Maya's hands. Part of me felt something shift, a door opening maybe, but another part of me, the one that had spent years begging to be heard, wanted to scream. Where was this mother when Maya was sobbing into my chest after Samuel cornered her at the wedding? Where was this mother when she sided with a liar over her own son, over a woman begging for safety and truth? The apologies rang loud, but the silence that had come before them still thundered louder. That night, Maya and I didn't talk much. We lay in bed, her hand in mine, both of us caught in that liminal space between memory and healing. I knew she was thinking about Rachel, about all the ways our stories overlapped, about all the women who never got the apology, the letter, the recognition. I was thinking about Emma. Our daughter had been born just 3 months before, a beautiful storm of dark eyes and fierce cries and soft skin that carried the promise of everything good in the world. When I looked at her, I saw the kind of life I had always wanted for myself, a life rooted in honesty and safety and love that doesn't twist or tear. I thought about what my mother would have said if we were still in contact. I thought about whether she would have told Emma that family sticks together no matter what. That blood is thicker than pain. And I realized something. Emma deserved better than that legacy. Maya and I spent the next week talking. We didn't rush into anything. We held each other through long nights, read over the letter again and again, picked it apart for sincerity and shadow. We cried, sometimes together, sometimes apart, sometimes. In the end, we decided on one thing. If we ever did open the door again, it would be on our terms. Not out of obligation, not out of guilt, not because someone finally found the words too late, but because we believed it was the right thing for our daughter. I wrote back to my mother, a short letter, gentle but clear. I told her I appreciated her words, that I could see she was trying, that I hoped her journey toward accountability and healing would continue with or without our involvement. But I also told her this wasn't a door swinging open, it was a window, cracked just enough for air, not yet wide enough for re-entry. That Emma's safety, Maya's peace, and my own clarity would always come first. And then I put the letter in the mail and let it go. Healing, I've learned, isn't a straight road. It loops and bends and sometimes doubles back. Sometimes it comes with soft apologies. Sometimes it never comes at all. But the beauty of healing is that it belongs to you, not to the people who hurt you, not to those who arrived late with regret in their hands. It belongs to the ones who chose love, even when it was hardest, the ones who stayed, the ones who learned to speak truth louder than tradition, the ones who built something whole from something broken. We still don't know what the future holds with my mother. Maybe one day she will meet Emma, maybe not. But I do know this, the family we've built, the one with Maya's strength, Emma's laughter, and my unshakable devotion, will never be a place where silence wins. That I promise. The first snowfall of the year came earlier than expected. It coated our street in a quiet, white calm that muffled every sound and turned our little world into something soft, almost gentle. I watched Emma press her tiny hand against the window, her breath fogging up the glass as she whispered, "Snow, Mama, snow." Maya knelt beside her, wrapping a blanket around them both, and I stood behind them, my heart filled with something I couldn't name. It wasn't just peace. It was a kind of fragile, well-earned joy, the kind you protect with your whole being. It had been 6 months since Rachel's testimony in court. 6 months since Samuel was sentenced, and my father was led out of the courtroom in silence, no longer the untouchable man who once used his money to manipulate people into submission. Their downfall had felt like a slow unraveling, but it ended in one sharp tear, the final truth ripping through all their carefully woven lies. And in the aftermath, when the dust had settled and the headlines faded, life returned to something simple again. Not perfect, not without scars, but simple in its goodness. Victoria and I had promised ourselves that we wouldn't live in the shadow of our past, that Emma would never feel the weight of it pressing on her future. We poured that promise into every bedtime story, every moment of play, every quiet morning where we simply watched her being a child free of the fear we once carried in our bones. We were learning slowly how to breathe again. But healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means remembering with clarity and choosing differently. One afternoon, while Emma napped and the snow continued to fall outside, I sat on the porch with a cup of coffee and a letter in my lap. It was from Rachel. She had written to thank us, not just for the support during the trial, but for believing her when no one else did, for speaking up, even when it cost us everything. She talked about her new life, living with her sister, taking night classes, finding a job she actually liked. She talked about therapy, about the hard days, and about the surprising kindness of strangers. But what stayed with me most was when she said, "I've started to feel safe again. Not all the time, but sometimes, and that's enough for now." That one line broke something open in me because I understood it too well. Safety isn't just locks on doors or restraining orders. It's knowing the people around you won't weaponize your vulnerability. It's finding laughter in your child's voice and not worrying what darkness might be lurking around the corner. It's holding your partner's hand and knowing you'll never have to beg them to choose you over convenience or tradition. It's the little things that pile up until they become something solid, something permanent. A few days after receiving Rachel's letter, I took Emma out into the snow for the first time. She waddled around in her two big boots, shrieking with delight every time her mittened hands touched the icy ground. Maya stood nearby, filming on her phone, her laughter warm and unguarded. It hit me then how far we had come from that night at the wedding, from the fear in Victoria's eyes as Samuel loomed over her, from the nights we spent checking every window twice, from the conversations with lawyers and the tears shed behind closed doors. All of it had led us here, to a snow-covered yard, and a little girl discovering the joy of winter. That night, as Emma slept between us, Maya whispered, "Do you ever think about what we lost?" I turned to look at her, her face partially lit by the moonlight. I knew what she meant, not just the family we left behind, but the innocence that was stolen, the peace we had to fight so hard for. I thought about it for a moment before replying. Sometimes. But I think more about what we've built, because what we've built matters more. We built a home where silence isn't a shield for cruelty, a home where apologies come with action, a home where our daughter will never have to wonder whether her pain is valid, where love doesn't come with conditions or guilt. We've made mistakes. God knows we've made them, but we've chosen again and again to be better. to break the cycle, to stand when it would be easier to fold. I think about Samuel sometimes, not with fear anymore, but with a kind of distant sorrow for the boy he was, for the man he chose to become, for all the chances he had to change and never took. I don't know what will become of him in prison. I don't know if my father will ever understand the damage he caused, but I've let go of the need for their redemption. It's not mine to hold. My focus now is on what's ahead, on Emma's laughter, on Maya's steady love, on the sound of our home filling with warmth each time the front door opens. It's on birthdays and scraped knees, on bedtime kisses and whispered dreams. It's on the truth that even after darkness, even after betrayal, even after loss, you can still build something beautiful. And we have. It started with a memory, a photo tucked away in a drawer that Emma discovered while playing. She was 3 and curious, her tiny fingers exploring every corner of our home like a little archaeologist. The picture was from my graduation, me in a cap and gown, standing between my mother and Samuel, a moment that once meant pride, now shadowed by pain. She brought it to me with a wide smile and asked, "Who's that, Daddy?" Her question pulled the breath from my chest. Maya looked at me, silently offering support with just a glance, and I realized in that moment that this too was part of healing, deciding how much of the past we share with the future. I knelt beside Emma, held the photo between us, and gave her the softest version of the truth. "That's my brother," I said, "but he doesn't live near us anymore." Her eyes were wide, curious, but content with that answer. She handed me the photo and wandered off to find her crayons, leaving me holding a fragment of my history I hadn't touched in years. That night, after Emma fell asleep, Maya and I sat on the couch in silence, the photo still on the coffee table. It felt like a ghost. We'd spent so long trying to move forward, building our life around peace, joy, and new memories. But that image reminded me that our past hadn't disappeared. It had just gone quiet. I wasn't haunted by Samuel anymore, not in the way I once was, but the ripple of what he did still touched the edges of my world. Maya reached over and placed her hand on mine. "You don't have to hide it," she said. "Not from me, not from her, not even from yourself." And the truth was, I still carried guilt. Not for cutting off my family, I knew that was the right choice, but for the years I spent trying to earn love from people who had only ever taught me how to diminish myself. For the way I doubted Victoria when she first told me something felt off with Samuel, for not walking away from that dinner party the moment I saw the way he looked at her. Guilt doesn't always make sense. It lingers, quietly questioning your strength even after you've proven it. We decided to keep the photo, not to display it, but to preserve it for Emma, for the questions she might one day ask when she's old enough to understand that sometimes love and family are not the same. We would tell her the truth when the time came, not to burden her, but to show her what resilience looks like. That's standing up for the people you love, even when it means walking away from everything you once thought you needed, is a kind of strength worth celebrating. Over time, the photo became less of a wound and more of a marker, a signpost on the long road we'd traveled. We added more pictures to that drawer. Emma's first day at preschool, her 3rd birthday party with balloons and cake, and a mess that made us laugh until our sides hurt. A vacation we took to the coast where Emma held Maya's hand as the tide rolled over her tiny feet for the first time. Each image layered joy over sorrow, proof that healing wasn't just possible, it was beautiful. Then one spring evening, a letter arrived. It was from my mother. The handwriting was shaky, unfamiliar after so many years. She didn't ask for forgiveness. She didn't make excuses. She simply wrote that she missed me, that she had watched my daughter grow up from a distance through Holly's shared stories, and that she hoped one day I might be willing to let her know the little girl who now carried my name forward. She said she had been in therapy for 3 years, that she was no longer in contact with my father, and that she had started volunteering at a women's shelter because of Rachel. I read the letter alone, then I read it again. this time slower, trying to hear her voice not as it had been in the courtroom or during the wedding or on those terrible calls, but as the mother she maybe wished she had been. I didn't know what to do. Maya read it later quietly and said, this doesn't have to be a decision today. Weeks passed. The letter stayed in the drawer next to the photo. Life continued, full of preschool drop-offs and weekend hikes and bedtime stories, but the edges of my anger had softened, not because what happened was okay, but because time had taught me how to stop letting it define me. I didn't know if I'd ever reply, but I knew this much: I wasn't afraid anymore. Not of my past, not of my parents, not of telling my daughter the truth someday. Samuel's chapter was over. That part of my life had ended with a slammed door and a courtroom full of strangers. But my story, our story, was still being written, one honest moment at a time. And maybe that was the final piece of healing, not pretending the pain never happened, but knowing it no longer held the pen. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, Maya sat on the porch, cradling a cup of tea between her hands. The gentle breeze carried the scent of blooming jasmine from the garden, a testament to the life they had cultivated together. Emma played nearby, her laughter ringing out like a melody, chasing fireflies that danced in the twilight. As I joined Maya, she looked up, her eyes reflecting the fading light. "I've been thinking about your mother's letter," she began softly, her voice tinged with contemplation. "Do you believe people can truly change?" I pondered her question, the weight of our shared history pressing heavily upon me. "I don't know," I admitted. "But I do know that change requires more than words. It demands consistent actions and a genuine commitment to growth." Maya nodded, her gaze drifting toward Emma, who now sat cross-legged on the grass, intently observing a firefly perched on her fingertip. "Our priority has always been to create a safe and nurturing environment for her," she said. "We can't allow anything to jeopardize that." The days that followed were filled with introspection and heartfelt conversations. We revisited the painful memories of the past, acknowledging the scars that still lingered beneath the surface. Yet amidst the pain, we recognized the strength we had discovered within ourselves and each other. One afternoon, while organizing the attic, I stumbled upon an old photo album. Dusting it off, I flipped through the pages, each image a snapshot of moments long gone. Among them was a picture of Samuel and me as children, grinning ear to ear as we built sandcastles on the beach. The innocence captured in that photograph stood in stark contrast to the man he had become. I brought the album downstairs, placing it on the coffee table where Maya was reading. She glanced up, curiosity flickering in her eyes. "Look what I found," I said, opening the album to the page with the beach photo. Maya leaned in, studying the image. A soft smile played on her lips. "You both looked so happy," she remarked. "We were," I replied, a bittersweet ache settling in my chest. It's hard to reconcile that with everything that happened later. Maya reached for my hand, intertwining her fingers with mine. "People are complex," she said gently. "Our experiences shape us, for better or worse. But we have the power to choose how we respond and who we become." Her words resonated deeply, reminding me of the resilience we had both demonstrated in the face of adversity. We had chosen to break free from the cycle of pain and create a new narrative for our family. As the weeks passed, we continued to focus on the life we had built together. Emma's boundless curiosity and zest for life served as a constant reminder of the beauty that surrounded us. We spent our days exploring nature trails, painting in the garden, and baking cookies on rainy afternoons. Each moment was a testament to the love and joy that now filled our lives. One evening, as we tucked Emma into bed, she looked up at us with her wide, innocent eyes. "Will I ever meet Grandma?" she asked, her voice laced with childlike wonder. Maya and I exchanged a glance, the unspoken understanding passing between us. I sat on the edge of Emma's bed, brushing a stray curl from her forehead. "Maybe someday," I said softly, "but for now, you have all the love you need right here." Satisfied with my answer, Emma snuggled into her blankets, her eyelids growing heavy. We kissed her goodnight, the warmth of her room enveloping us as we stepped into the hallway. As we stood together in the quiet of our home, I realized that while the past would always be a part of our story, it did not define us. We had the power to shape our future, to choose love over fear, and to embrace the beauty of the present moment. And so, with hearts full of hope and gratitude, we continued forward, hand in hand, ready to face whatever came next, knowing that together we could weather any storm. Our home feels quieter now, not in a hollow way, but in a peaceful, full kind of silence. The kind that hums with safety and soft moments, like the sound of our daughter's tiny footsteps in the morning, or the gentle creak of the rocking chair where Victoria nurses her. There's a rhythm to our days now, one that doesn't carry the tension of waiting for something awful to happen. That kind of peace, it feels earned. After everything we went through, I never thought we'd get here. I used to lie awake beside Victoria, watching the shadows on the ceiling shift with passing headlights, wondering if the past would ever really let us go. There were nights when I held her while she cried in her sleep, whispering my own helpless apologies into her hair. Guilt is strange like that. It attaches itself to you even when you know you did your best. I wasn't the one who hurt her, but I let my brother into her world. I thought keeping her from my family for those first few months would be enough. I thought I could control the damage. I was wrong. But healing is not about never being wrong. It's about what you do when you finally see the truth. It's about the courage to cut ties, even with blood. It's choosing the kind of family you want to build instead of the one you were born into. I think of that every time I look at Emma, when she curls her little hand around my thumb, when she laughs at Victoria's silly animal voices, when she sleeps with her mouth slightly open, safe and soft in her crib. I look at her and I think, you'll never know what that darkness felt like. Not if I have anything to do with it. Victoria's strength continues to astound me. Not the loud kind, not the cinematic tear down the world kind. Hers is quiet and enduring. The strength that shows up every single day, even on the ones when she's running on 2 hours of sleep and worry, still tries to claw its way in. She has poured so much love into our daughter, into our life together. It's like she's rewritten her own story, but I see the scars too. The way she tenses when she sees unfamiliar cars parked outside, how she checks the locks more than once before bed. Trauma doesn't vanish just because you escape the source. It echoes. Still, she's never once let it steal the light from her voice when she reads Emma her bedtime story. She's never let it stop her from opening her arms to joy. Our decision to cut ties with my parents wasn't easy, even after everything. There were moments, especially when my mother wrote that long, rambling apology, when the little boy in me still wanted to believe we could fix things, that somehow, if I just explained it all one more time, they'd finally understand. But then I'd remember Victoria's face at the wedding, the fear, the betrayal, the way she looked at me like I was the only thing tethering her to safety in a room full of people who claimed to be family. That memory shuts down any flicker of doubt. We chose not to respond to my mother's letter, not because we hate her, but because love without accountability is not love, it's manipulation. We've learned to build boundaries like we build walls around Emma's playpen, not to keep out the world, but to protect the most precious things inside. Emma knows none of this, of course. To her, the world is still soft and full of wonder. She giggles at the rustling leaves outside our window and claps her hands when the neighbor's dog barks. Her favorite thing is to press her face against mine and squeal with delight like she's just discovered something brand new. And maybe she has. Maybe love that safe, that pure is brand new every time. Maybe it's how we start again. Sometimes I think about Rachel. I wonder how she's doing now, how far along she is in her own healing. We haven't spoken since she sent a thank you note through Holly. Victoria keeps it tucked in one of our photo albums. I think it matters to her knowing that what she endured helped someone else walk away. There's a quiet kind of justice in that, a thread of meaning that ties survival to purpose. We don't talk about Samuel anymore, not because we pretend it never happened, but because he holds no power here. Not in this house, not in our memories, not in the future we're building. He's just a shadow on a page we've turned. Our daughter's world will be one of gentle mornings and safe arms. She'll know what love feels like, not because we say it often, though we will, but because we show her. Every scraped knee kissed, every dance party in the living room, every night we tuck her in with lullabies. That's the legacy we choose. When people talk about survival, they often stop at the moment of escape. But real survival is what happens after. It's learning to breathe again without flinching. It's letting yourself laugh and trust and hope, even when the past lurks behind you. We survived. But more than that, we've built something beautiful from the rubble. And in the stillness of our home, with laughter echoing off the walls and love layered into every corner, I know without a doubt we're finally free. True healing begins the moment we choose to break the cycle, to protect what matters even when it means walking away from those who share our blood. This story is a testament to the power of love that refuses to bend to abuse, to the strength found in setting boundaries, and to the quiet courage it takes to build a new beginning. It reminds us that family is not defined by genetics, but by those who choose to love, protect, and grow with us. When we stop enabling harm and start nurturing peace, we don't just survive, we create something beautiful. If this story moved you or made you think about your own boundaries and values, don't forget to hit that like button. It really helps the channel. And if you want more true, emotionally driven stories that speak to the heart and soul, be sure to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new upload. Share your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever had to make a tough call between family and doing what's right? We'd love to hear your story. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.